Good evening. How are you? Well, Jefferson's taking care of us well tonight because the temperature is like 78 degrees out. It's very comfortable. There's no wind to speak of, and there's no humidity either to speak of, so it's pretty pleasant. I spent the day writing a lot, although I didn't get to go swimming as well, so we're keeping up our level of exercise, which is always easier when it's cooler, and it is today. The Irish, but not exclusively the Irish, think in terms of the rule of three, the Trinity. And I'm not subscribing to that right now, but I am subscribing to the rule of three. And I think a way to organize the big picture involving Trump is to use that rule and to think of the three in this way. There's 2016, 2020, and 2024. 2016 was the thesis, if you will, the story that was written that caught many people flat-footed and prompted O'Donnell recently on MSNBC to talk about beware of 2016 again. Now 2020 was the antithesis. Those of you who spend time thinking about these things know what's coming next, but let's talk about the antithesis. It was Biden. It was the nation taking on Trump. And I think that we thought, I didn't, but I think a lot of people thought, all we had to do was to win the White House back and ignore this guy and he'd go away. But the impeachment effort right after January 6th and the continued investigation of the stormtroopers in his effort to subvert our government and overturn an election he lost and put himself in that position was not taken seriously enough. And so we had the antithesis, but we didn't go far enough. 2024, this is the period of synthesis. This is the period in which we put it all together. We learn from our lessons. We've reduced our ignorance of how evil this person could be. We've learned that not only is he evil, but he wants to overthrow the government forever in terms of changing what has been a world-renowned democracy and republic and make it an autocracy, a dictatorship. So that's another fair look at what's gone wrong in America and what we have to do to set it right. Now, the news continues to be good, and there are more stories about how Trump is losing it and lost, if you will, and doesn't know how to handle it. My amateur theory is that however simple the assassination attempt was, meaning that it didn't succeed and that he got some damage to his ear one way or other. And I don't mean to belittle assassination attempts, but I think when he said, well, now I might become a nice guy and so forth, he's very self-conscious about it. And I think what we're seeing, perhaps, if it's not a show, that is him playing possum until he comes out fighting, if you will, but he just doesn't seem that way. He seems more like he's been damaged in a way we didn't understand. I heard one columnist mention that perhaps Trump has become, in his own way, a man compromised by circumstances, what happened to him. Not just his age, but this attempt. It's kind of a form of PTSD. And, you just can't tell how badly you're hurt by something. It doesn't come out immediately. And it's not that I'm wishing it on him, but I'm not going to cry about it either, because the man has had so many gifts, so much license to be the evil person he's been. It's very hard to think of him in anything but the most uncharitable way, and to think in terms of defense against who he is and the agenda he embraces. But while he is figuring out who he is, we have had some great success with the team of Kamala and Tim. And it's kind of a kick that Jill Biden has been in Paris. And at the same time, the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, has been there. And they've been there during the Olympics. And apparently, Jill, who's a sporting kind of person, she has arranged to pass the baton to the first gentleman. Isn't that cool? But that's her. And that's why the environment is the Biden, Harris, Waltz team is significant because they're the real thing. There was one of these color-coded comparisons of the several people, and it was interesting, the abundant public service of the three people I've mentioned. And when you look at either Trump or that bag of bones he's chosen as a vice president, you see that they're much more interested in lining their pockets than representing the people. The situation with Vance made me think of T.S. Eliot. And you might wonder how T.S. Eliot could be in this context. And I'm not talking about his famous poem, The Wasteland, which is worth reading and rereading. But you may know that he did some writings on cats. And he had various chapters, and it's a Broadway, I think it's still a Broadway musical. And I think it's called Cats. And I went to it ages ago. And it's based on T.S. Eliot's short stories about cats. A very cute publication. And if you like cats, you get even more out of it. We have several cats ourselves. But the one that I remember that I think most fits these circumstances is a story about Mr. Mistopheles. This is by Eliot. And bear with me, but all his inventions are his own bat. There is no such cat in the metropolis. He holds all the patent monopolies for performing illusion and confusion. Forgive the reading, well, forgive the memory in the reading. But you might do yourself a favor if you can get you can get it online, I'm sure, and read about Mr. Mistopheles and others. The point I'm making is, even among cats, it's not that they aren't just marvelously preening to their masters and to others and amusing us and showing us a different kind of loyalty than dogs. We have one, I want to call it White Cloud all the time. And he's so bushy and large, and it's amazing to me how he moves his body so easily. And he'll sit there and stare right at you, looking at you. So, we're not childless, and we do like cats. And I don't know that you can trust a person that doesn't like animals, period. And I guess that's Vance. So enjoy the notion of cats despite these characters in the Republican Party. Now, Trump wants to set interest rates. Now, if you looked at this guy's resume, putting aside the fact you'd never make him president, would you put him in charge of making interest rates? He would posture himself, be ignorant, not do the homework, and make bad choices, even without being evil and thinking to make bad choices on purpose. And there seems to be an infection of justice wandering around. RFK Jr. apparently has convinced everybody he really doesn't live in New York, and as a result, he's not going to be on the ballot. Lives in California. I wonder if he's on the ballot there. You see this coming apart. Let's go back to our boy Vance. The other day, Dana Bash, she she interviewed Vance, and she found him wanting. But more importantly, she had the energy, the vigor, to use her gray matter and interrupt and answer. Not everything. These guys is like a fire hose of lies. But she got some very good ones. And then she had an interview afterwards with Pete Buttigieg, who took them down more. And Texas O'Rourke described him as a guy that this is the guy to know, this is the guy to hate. And I think it's true. It's not simple. It's that he lies badly. He lies unkindly. He seems to have no redeeming features. And he yet claims a higher ground that is undeserved by any of his actions. And you got to wonder about a guy who would pick him to be his running mate. McCain was a different kind of guy, but he was brought down by the vice presidential choice foisted upon him. I can see Russia from my back porch. So we have this team, and they seem to be coming apart, and I'm just fine with that. And I hope it accelerates, and I hope that the margins grow from we're statistically in the margin, and yet we're ahead, to we pull ahead. There was a campaign years ago when I believe it was Clinton. You correct me if I'm wrong. And Dole was I'm pretty sure was the opponent. And Clinton swept through every state on the way to the convention and after the convention where he thought he might have a problem, and he crushed Dole. That's how I remember it. And I'm not subscribing to the view. You have to accept it because I remember it. But I'm pretty certain that's what happened. And I see the possibility of that happening here. And I think we'll see more separate appearances by the Democratic team to take care of business, if you will. And I think what we're going to see is them running like mad. Now, Trump is probably going to the air. They're talking about him spending $100 million between now and Labor Day. But, it's how smart you are. It's not how much you have, it's how smart you are with the money. And he's in a bad place now, and I'm fine with that. He's always been in a bad place. It just seems that the fortunes have shifted. And so the synthesis that I mentioned at the outset is the end of Trump. If we keep ourselves on point, if we keep pushing, if we keep the joy to do what we're doing, which is fighting evil. I mean, isn't this what kids want to do? Boy or girl, man or woman, fight the good fight against someone evil and have a happy ending. And that happy ending is stopping Trump at the door, dealing with whatever nonsense and violence he may come up with when he loses, and putting him where he belongs, if a judge and jury decided, in jail for as long as is appropriate. So, that's what I got to say. And I hope to be out again tomorrow. I can't expect the weather to be as good as it is this evening. It's going to go down to 60. And I'd be tempted to walk then, except it'd just be a voice in the dark. So, have a good evening. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.